This is the Michael Bryan Show. Hi everyone, welcome back to the show, and I am joined with Mike Thompson, who is a recognised expert in leadership and talent development. So we are looking all things trying to grow yourself within a company and how to navigate the corporate world. So Mike, thanks so much for joining me.
Hey Mike, thanks so much for having me. It's good to talk to you.
So I thought we'd start a little bit about yourself, really, trying to dive into how you got started and what brought you into the position that you're in today.
Yeah, well, it's been a long journey. I've been in the CEO role of our company is SVI, and we have a flagship product called Learner Mobile. And I've been doing this for 20 years now, so it's been quite a while. But what got me here was I used to have an ad agency, and I loved advertising at the Madison Avenue. It was cool. It was sexy. It was hip. It was exciting. It was engaging. All of that kind of stuff. And it was a lot of fun. I love the creative process. I love being around creative people, innovative people, people that think differently. And the advertising industry certainly brought that. But a number of years into the advertising agency, my wife and I lost our first son to leukemia, and it was brutal. It was tragic, and gosh, it just forces you to think about things in life that you never thought you were going to contemplate. And so for me, it was just that, my gosh, life is beautiful. It's precious. It's a gift. And in that insight, in that understanding, or in that discovery, I went back to work after burying my son, and the world was no longer the same. And what I saw was people inside companies were just zombie-like. They were just deadbeats, and they were almost sad, and they couldn't wait until the day that they retired. And at that moment, they were going to choose to live. And it really, really bothered me enough to say, you know what, as much as I love advertising, life is short. And I can't just watch this as a bystander. I've got to somehow engage in coming alongside people and helping them come alive. And there was this great quote by Howard Thurman, who old English author, that said, don't ask yourself what the world needs. Ask yourself what makes you come alive, and go do that. Because what the world needs is people who have come alive. So based on kind of that insight, I did something kind of crazy, and I sold the ad agency for way too little money. But that was okay, because I wanted all the chips going into this investment into coming alongside of people and helping them come alive. I didn't know what the business model looked like, but I was going to figure it out. And so started SVI at that time. And it was a lot harder and a lot longer and a lot harder than I ever anticipated it to be. But today, I can gladly say that in our mission, we certainly are coming alongside people, helping them come alive, helping them achieve significant, and we're really excited about the opportunity to be able to do that.
It sounds like one of the keys to that, I guess, is trying to think differently, as you mentioned earlier, trying to put yourself in a state where you're able to come up with different problems, things that people might not even be aware of, and then solving those and trying to keep yourself in this state where you're not the same as everyone else. What are your thoughts on that?
100%. And I got to thank all the creatives that I've worked with. I mean, the people that have impacted my life the most, and the people that have really fueled a lot of our growth and progress and success are those creative thinkers, those people who think differently, who aren't afraid to think differently. So 100%, I love learning from other people, and I'm a very curious leader. And I think that one of the discoveries over my career, Mike, that I've made is that The smartest people in the room aren't the ones who are racing to give the right answer. The smartest people in the room are the ones asking the right questions. So if you're going to be a creative thinker, it's not about shouting out answers quickly for the sake of recognition. Really, those people are the ones that are just asking the what if, why not, how come questions. And when you surround yourself with those kinds of people, it's just a different kind of conversation that always happens. So for me, those creative thinkers, those creative leaders, those curious people are very, very valuable to my growth, my career advancement and growth, and so on. I would say that there's one other thing that's important in its association with that, and that is you've got to show up with humility and authenticity. So if you're a curious thinker but you're not showing up humbly, you're not going to really be focused on what you can learn. And I think that humility just puts you in the right state to listen more than you speak, to focus on what you can glean from the conversation, what you can learn. So the combination of just that curiosity and that humility are what I've really valued in others who have been a part of this journey with me, and it's been great.
I'd be curious actually, because they sound almost like opposites, because you're asking the right questions, you're
Yeah.
communicating effectively, and yet, I mean, you hear the analogy of one mouth, two ears, and listen
Yeah.
twice as much as you would speak. But how would
Right.
that person actually communicate? How would they come across? How would they actually have a conversation with someone if, based on what we said there, well, you should really be listening as well?
Yeah, I just think it's a good question, Mike. A room full of people asking questions, how do you get anywhere? But I just think that that's collaboration. I think when you have a lot of curious people in there, the advancement of the conversation is so much better, so much faster, because you just uncover these unknown unknowns. And just discovery happens within the group through that ideation, through that curiosity. It doesn't mean that you won't ever have an opinion. It doesn't mean that you can't share some knowledge. But if you're sharing your knowledge 90% of the conversation, that's probably that's not well balanced. So I'm not saying that all you're doing is asking questions, but gosh, if can you ask 60% of the questions in a conversation and maybe share 40% of your knowledge, maybe something like that balance is better. So I think it's probably the tone of a discussion, the tone of a meeting. Show up first to learn. Be willing to contribute your knowledge, but show up first to learn.
Would you say that that actually changes the questions that you would answer? Like if you're looking with a group at, let's say, a project or a problem that you're trying to solve, I get the impression that if you lead with curiosity and trying to learn, that actually encourages different questions and therefore
Yeah.
different answers.
Yes, 100%. No question. I mean, I think how you show up is really, really important in your career growth, in your success. And for me, showing up with a point of view, in other words, don't ever show up to a conversation or a meeting without having done some homework and bringing some sort of point of view to the discussion. Having a point of view is a really, really good thing in a conversation. Does that mean that your point of view is right? Does it mean that it's 100% developed? Not necessarily. You could show up with a point of view, and through dialogue you discover that, what, I think most of my point of view is fine, but it's off in this area. Thank you for that discovery. Thank you for that clarification. But having a point of view requires showing up with some preparation and then a willingness to be moved in the conversation. The alternative to that is show up with a point of view and railroad it through the conversation. Show up having done your homework and then doing everything you can to promote the work that you did prior to the meeting. And I think that that's a little bit dangerous. But it is human nature. If I'm going to put some pre-work into this meeting, I want that time to be honored and well spent. And so you just dig in, and it's very, very hard to do the homework, bring a point of view to the table, and yet still be open to the ideas in the room, and still being willing to be movable and not so dug in. It's tricky. It's tricky space. But the rock stars in the room are able to do that. They're able to bring real, valuable input to the conversation, to the meeting, and yet they show up eager to learn. That's hard to do, but it's really, really valuable when it's done right.
It sounds like it's just a difficult thing to navigate if you're in a position whereby you're able to have these conversations. Because if you think of, let's just say, people in different positions, most of their output is based on being productive. How much can you do this? How fast can you do that? Where what we're talking about today is, okay, well, it's about trying to figure out whether this is the problem that's even worth solving, or maybe there's something else going on. Maybe we can already solve that by doing this thing over here. And it's almost like the quality of the conversation is where it's at. And being able to do that sounds like a very, very valuable skill.
Yeah, and I think the successful organizations create that type of culture where they value the collaboration, they value the diversity of ideas, they value like removing a significant part of the hierarchy in the room, so it's not just one voice that's getting heard, and that voice comes from the highest role in the conversation. But culture does that. And so the companies that do it really, really well, I'd say this: the people that do that really, really well have probably looked for the right company culture that's going to value that. So you mentioned a thing a second ago, Mike, called productivity. You know, the push is be productive, get to the answer, move with speed. I am all for speed. Speed is a competitive advantage in our organization. We must move really, really fast. But we can't, in my humble opinion, we can't be robotic. And I think what is happening in today's business environment is we're just looking, we think to achieve speed, we've got to be robotic. We've got to have that script, that playbook, that process, and and what it's trying to do is, in my opinion, weed out the creativity of that organization. And that's another paradox. It's like, how do you take the proper time for creativity, work with speed, and maximize productivity? And I think what a lot of businesses are doing today with their culture is they're removing the creativity and they're just pushing the productivity through standards that come across fairly robotic. For us, moving with speed means that we better invite the creativity in. Now, once we invest that creative time, once we invest in that collaborative time, we get to the best idea. We don't short circuit the best idea. That creative time, that space allows us to get to the best idea. And then it ensures that everyone aligns behind that. So we've given not only time for the creative to breathe, but we also have dialogued it and debated it enough to where everyone walks out aligned. And now we can move with speed. The challenge with roboticness is that no one conversation is the same, and we live in a world that is constantly changing, and we've got to be agile enough to adjust to a situation or a scenario, an unknown, And if all we're capable of doing is just the robotic, then once we're challenged with an unknown, or once we're challenged with a competitive shift, or once we're challenged with some global challenge, we don't know what to do when it's outside of the robotic. And I want to have people in the organization who aren't afraid to make a move even when they don't quite know the answer, because they understand the values and they understand the principles. And I think more companies need to allow for that creative, collaborative process to get to the best idea, to move the fastest that they can, even in the most dynamic environment. And I think the best companies do that.
Would you say that there were anything else that could be helpful? So we mentioned culture, we've mentioned being creative, being dynamic, possibly being able to move with the tide so that you're not kind of stuck in your own way. How else can people become more effective and more efficient as a team? If we're thinking companies, if we're thinking high performing teams and individuals, what else is important?
Yeah, I mean, I think you see it all the time, Mike. You see high performers join the wrong organization and they become low performers. I think you see low performers joining the right organization and they become high performers. Not to dive into sports analogy, but maybe it's the best example. You've seen champions who have won everything go to another team that has the wrong team dynamics. The locker room is tough, the culture is weak, and they'll fizzle out. So I think it's certainly a marriage between the individual performer and the company culture. And I think those high performers need to be very, very careful where they go in their career, and make sure that wherever they go, that they pick a culture that is that high performing culture. So I like Peter Drucker and some of his writings, but the one statement that I love the most out of Peter Drucker is he says, "Culture eats strategy for breakfast." I believe that wholeheartedly. I think that you can have a company that has a great strategy and a bad culture, and they're going to underwhelm. You have a company that has an amazing culture and a bad strategy, and they're going to navigate their way to success through it. Strategy can change. Culture's tougher to change. And so I think people have got to be careful about the culture that they allow themselves to be a part of. For me, when you're looking at culture, I'm looking at two things. I'm looking at if you think about maybe a continuum, Mike, or maybe it's a 4-quadrant chart. But on that, let's say it's a 4-quadrant chart. On the x-axis, you've got the word love. On the y-axis, you've got the word accountability. There are many companies who are afraid of that term love. I've even heard some people say that's stupid. That's a stupid word to bring into your organization. Maybe it is. We embrace it. We embrace relationships in our organization. We value that connection in our organization. It's not just professional at SVI. It is also personal. I'm for the lives of every single person in our organization. How can I not be? It's what this business was built on. When you lose your son to leukemia, and you all of a sudden discover the beauty and the amazement of life, how can you not have a love connection, a relationship with your team? How can you not really appreciate, value them, and be for them? So that's love, and we lean into the love side. We just do. We're for each other. We lift each other up. It is personal and it's professional. On the other side of that, though, you've got accountability, and so the difficult things for love-oriented cultures or relationship-driven cultures, accountability is hard because it's like, wait, I thought we liked each other. How come you're giving me this tough feedback? Championship organizations do that. They aren't afraid to value the relationships in the organizations, value the relationships with an individual, and then also not have any hesitation to hold that person accountable and to give direct feedback that might not be so flattering to them. When certain cultures can have those strong relationships and at the same time, those relationships don't get in the way of continuous and constant feedback, then I don't think you can have a championship organization. I think it requires both. Those organizations that are full on accountability, I'm going to give you feedback all the time. It's never going to be good enough. We're always striving, and then don't have that relationship. It's like an empty bank account. All you're doing is making withdrawals, and you're not making any deposits. So those cultures with the love that are making the deposits and the accountability that's making the withdrawals, those are the kinds of cultures that thrive. And champions are able to pick those cultures, and they're able to thrive in those cultures.
I like that analogy of making withdrawals and deposit. It's almost like if you get the balance right, someone would be
Right.
happy to receive feedback if it would help
Exactly.
them get
100.
better. If, let's just say, rather than the whole thing being wrong, you might have one little, kink in the armor that we need to straighten out, but the rest is working pretty well. It's working pretty good. It's working. We just need this little tweak here and everything can run so much smoother. You'd be more open to that rather than just being
Mm,
told you're slow, you're this, you're that, you're not creative, you don't contribute anything, and then you're asking for favors on top.
love that. That's well said, Mike. What you said there just made me think. You know what? In the right culture, incremental improvement can have exponential results. Those little moves every single day in the right culture can make a massive impact in your organization and in your career. That's a really good point.
So I wonder then, how do you know that you're, let's just say, built this way? Let's just say you want to know whether you are a fit for these kinds of companies. How do you know? I know it's trying to avoid this whole thing being a tick box exercise, Mike,
Yeah.
but how do you know? How can you tell? Because then if you turn up to, let's just say you turn up to a meeting or you turn up to an interview, you want to go for this position, you like the company, you like the culture, and they sit there across from you say, well, you're not a good fit, unfortunately, maybe try these instead, and you start to feel like, well, I thought I was ready for this.
Yeah. No, I think that that's a really good question. And where I think it starts is if you're interviewing with an organization, one of the things that you're going to want to know is what is the mission? And if the mission comes across as a standard sign on a wall that is so generic that it doesn't say really anything, you got to be skeptical. If the mission is unique and the mission is authentic and the mission is almost narrated into a story. You see that organization has a story and it's wrapped up in its mission. That's a really, really good sign to go with those mission-oriented organizations. So many organizations are going to say we're mission-minded, we're mission-minded, we're mission-minded. But you can really evaluate that and you can be skeptical in that. And you can say, you know what, it sounds like some boilerplate mission statement that they grabbed out of a textbook somewhere. Avoid those kinds of companies. But when you see a mission that is unique and alive and you can kind of hear the passion and the story when they're sharing it, race to that kind of organization. I would say another thing that you're going to want to look for is you're not going to want to you're going to want to look at those organizations that are trying to build rote repetition and robotic nature in order to drive productivity. I think you got to be really, really careful there. I'll give you an example. We expanded our sales organization not too long ago, and hiring the next round of salespeople was a bit tough. And the reason that it was a bit tough is because I got like 150 resumes, and I narrowed it down to 17. And when I interviewed personally those 17, it was amazing to see how they showed up to the interview from a sales perspective. And when they showed up from the interview, they wanted to know on target earnings, and they wanted to know resources and tools, and they wanted to know what's my script and what am I expected in as far as pursuing leads and outbound leads, and what's marketing doing for my inbound leads and all of that kind of stuff. And I'll never forget so many of those conversations. It was almost like speed dating. They would come in, and I'm glad they showed up with questions, but all of the questions was around what is the process? What is the process? How am I going to maximize my money? How am I going to maximize my income, my comp, all of that kind of stuff? And what's my speed to convert? And it was so amazing because they were coming from previous places where selling was robotic. You put in this subject line, you do this heading, you connect it to your CRM, and they wanted to understand how quickly they could move through that. All good stuff. I'm not discounting any of that stuff. But I didn't see a lot of people that wanted to learn about the company. I didn't see a lot of people that wanted to understand what our mission was. I didn't see personality come into those interviews. And the thing that we said we will avoid in sales is we will avoid the rote. We want to see personality. We want to see curiosity. We want to see authenticity. We want to see empathy. And those people that show up with that curious mindset around the mission, around the story, around the narrative, around what kind of clients we're serving and why, and developing some empathy around those customers that we serve, those are the ones that we wanted to hire. And out of the 17, we got 2. And those 2 stood out, and they joined the organization, and they're rocking. They're doing great. So show up like that, curious about the mission, wanting to hear the story, and being curious about is the work worthy, and if it is, race to those kinds of organizations.
I suppose then once they're in there, it helps them integrate if they fit the culture as well, because there's nothing quite like, when you enter a company and you're changing companies every 12 months because they thought you were a fit based on X, Y, and Z, but then 1, 2, and 3 came up and you couldn't adjust, or it stopped being a fit. And I think some people tend to change as well once they get out of interview mode and they get into work mode, day-to-day mode. Their true colors will start to show, and then that can make things quite awkward.
Yeah. And that's a really good point, Mike. We are far from perfect. And yeah, we're a mission-minded company. Yeah, I think we operate most of the time with authenticity, but are there times when we don't? Yeah. Are there times when we screw it up? Yeah. Are there times when we break our values? Sure. We're not perfect. No company is. I think that the championship cultures, though, show up with a great deal of grace. We are mission minded, but we all understand that there are going to be times when we miss the mark. And what's going to happen then? Are we going to start judging each other then? Company judges employee, employee judges company? Gosh, I hope not. I hope that there's some grace extended there, and a conversation happens and a learning happens, and we all point to that North Star. We all point to what we're really trying to do at the highest level. We all point to the mission and say, you know what? We didn't live that out very well. You didn't live that out very well. I didn't live that out very well. Our organization didn't live that out very well. And rather than sweeping it under the rug, we fully acknowledge it. We take it. We hold ourselves accountable. And so I think screw ups are going to happen. Mess ups are going to happen. Mistakes are going to happen. We are going to fail at times. But what do you do in that moment Do you try to hide it? Do you try to sweep it under the rug? Do you ignore it? Or do you bring it to the table and say, let's make sure we don't do that again? What can we all do to make a massive and immediate improvement here and do better next time? And I think the great cultures are willing to do that. But it takes, like we talked about at the beginning, Mike, humility, authenticity. And those organizations that bring that amount of the right amount of humility to the table, they're going to be able to work through those failures. They're going to be able to get up off the mat when they get knocked down. And we're going to be able to do that together because we all have grace for each other, and we race to get back to the way that we were, the way that we're built.
Now, we've talked about things like culture and trying to build the right environment for, the high performing individuals, the teams that want to work together towards the common goal. And one of the first things that I came up with was, well, maybe they need some help. Maybe they need some tools and strategies and resources that can help them achieve those things. Are there any commonalities, any patterns, anything that you've noticed where these tools, these resources, these are more helpful than some of the others?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, tools and resources and processes are crazy critical to our success at SVI and Learner Mobile. Tools, processes, resources are really important for the success of any organization. So I think, however, what are the tools to get to this point, to where you are mission minded, to where you are humble, to where you do show up authentically, to where you can be a part of a high performance team and still extend grace. You can be in pursuit of the championship and still love someone even when they're down, even when they made a mistake. So as far as tools and resources and processes are concerned, I don't know. I just think that helps you operationally. Those things help your organization succeed operationally. And operational focus is really, really good and really, really necessary. And every company has to do that extremely well, extremely well. The problem is that I think they don't have the other side of that coin. And the other side of that coin is just that mission and that culture. And I don't know, I don't really know of a whole lot of tools and resources that are going to help you discover that, other than I think there are some incredible authors out there. I think that there are some incredible coaches, out there that can help organizations really focus on the other side of that coin well. I think that there's a lot of engineers and accountants and that really help do a great job with the with the operational side. But I do think that there's got to be those visionaries. I think that there's got to be those storytellers that are on the other side of the coin, that work closely and in collaboration with the engineers and the accountants. And when those two can work together well and collaboratively, all under the mission, then I think we're strong. So what tools, resources, processes that are helpful? I don't know. I think you got to get an MBA. You got to read stories. You got to align yourself with coaches that are really good with the work behind the mission, the creativity, the authenticity, the culture kind of stuff. I probably didn't answer that one very well, Mike, but that's what I got.
It's okay. I guess it just makes me think that the technology may or may not actually play a part. Like, you hear a lot about AI and automations and this and that, and I guess it might be specific to the industry, perhaps, of where do you see leadership and high performing teams going in a world where technology may or may not be taking over, possibly even taking your role altogether?
Yeah, I think that's a really good way to say it. I don't think companies have a soul, obviously. I don't, but companies can have a story, or they can have a soulful story. They need to have a soulful story. And I don't know that you can put tech behind that. You can put tech behind the operation. We're big in AI. We do a ton of AI. AI is at the core of, oftentimes at the core of what we do. And we're seeing tremendous advantages to that. Our marketing department uses AI quite a bit. So does our services team. But without their prompting, without their setting the right tone, without their building the knowledge base for that AI, and just asking AI to do all of it for you, AI is going to spit out some bad stuff. It's going to spit out some dangerous stuff. It's going to spit out some wrong stuff. But when people are helping build a knowledge base that aligns with your values, that aligns with your mission, that aligns with your voice, that aligns with your tone, and then you just prompt the AI over and over and over again from the knowledge base, because you're consistent in your story, you're consistent in your communications with AI, you're consistent in how you're training AI. Then AI can start to adopt that, and it can spit that out in the work itself. But without that soulful mindset feeding the AI, I think you're going to be in trouble. So having the right people ensure that it's building the knowledge base behind the mission, behind the story, behind the narrative, behind the values is absolutely critical in order to make progress in that way.
It's making me think that the right people can almost prevent all of these problems from ever coming up, because we've been speaking about it a lot when we think of the way that it runs, the way that companies are wanting to develop. It sounds like people are more important now than ever.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, I'm in conversations all the time around, is AI taking jobs? Is AI taking jobs? Is AI taking jobs? Maybe, but not for us. I mean, we've hired so much more and so much faster as we've evolved in AI. There are no jobs that have been cut. There have been, we haven't cut on our hiring. As a matter of fact, we've hired more because of AI. So yeah, I don't think you can take the people out of AI. I will say that what AI has really helped us do is it's helped us be faster, and it's helped us multiply our capability and our capacity. But that just means that we can do more because we've freed up some time on some of the work that might be basement level work, production level work. And now we get to focus on the creative work, on the storytelling, on the people side, and that's really been powerful. It used to take, we hire instructional designers, and instructional design arena, if you're in that arena, you've probably heard the math of, for every hour of training delivered required 40 hours of design and development. So if you go to an hour-long leadership class, there was 40 hours of work from an instructional designer, a graphic designer, a media production person, 40 hours of work to deliver that. With AI, we've been able to reduce that from 40 hours of work to 4 hours of work. So it's 90%. It's helped us 90%. It's absolutely incredible. Sometimes I'm embarrassed to even share that stat because it's, in some cases, unbelievable. But what that's done is now an instructional designer can do so much more work. They can do more courses because they're doing them faster, and AI is helping them. So it's really helped the growth of our business. We're able to do so much more for so many more customers because of AI, and we're able to hire so many more instructional designers because we have more work to do. So I think that that's been kind of the marriage between AI and our team and our growth. Is, yes, we're doing it faster. Yes, we're doing more of it. We're doing it faster, but we're also doing a lot more of it, and therefore that's ignited some of the growth in our organization.
Now, I know you mentioned the creative work earlier. Maybe you've alluded to this already, but how does leadership change? Does the role of leadership change? Are there any new skills and habits that we've had to bring in as a result of this? So whether it's the company growing, whether it's technology allowing you to scale and allow you to do more for more people, how do you see leadership shifting as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know. I go back, Mike, to the two sides of the coin. If you're an operational leader, you can't be ignorant to the mission. And if you're a mission mind or the creative, or if you're a mission minded leader, a creative leader, you can't be ignorant to the operation. Now, does that mean you have to, as a leader, be great, exceptional at both? No. I think that there are gifted operational leaders. And then I think that there are naturally gifted, mission minded, visionary, creative leaders. A leader might tend to be naturally gifted in either of those, but unlikely both of those. So for me, I probably skew to the visionary, creative side of the business. And that's where my leadership probably naturally moves to. But that doesn't mean that I get to ignore things operationally. There are things called natural abilities, and then there are things called compensatory abilities. I'm probably naturally gifted to the creative side, but I got to compensate to the operational side. I still got to invest time into that, even though it's harder for me. I still have to invest that time. I still have to develop my skills in the operational side. Now, I have a business partner. I have several business partners, but one of them, Tim Harmon, he's operationally gifted. He is that's natural for him. What's not natural as much for him is the creative mission side, the narrative storytelling side. That doesn't mean that he gets to ignore that just because he's more gifted in the operational side, that he can ignore the creative side. He's still going to have to develop that. It's not so natural. So he's going to have to invest in developing those compensatory skills in order to be there. However, I would say in our organization, the organization's going to skew to me on the creative side. The organization's going to skew to him on the operational side. He's just better at it. So while I can't ignore it, I also don't have to win all the time at it. I got to win in the creative side. I got to do that because it's naturally gifted. And then I got to be to a certain standard operationally, but I'll never reach his standard. And that's what makes us probably work so well together is I value his natural giftedness in the operational side, and he values my natural giftedness in the creative side. And we both come together in order to bring that level of tension to that right level of tension to the organization so that we have expertise in both.
It sounds like you need to really know your stuff in terms of developing yourself and trying to find your next thing to learn. How do you think about learning, developing yourself, trying to find the next rabbit hole, I suppose, to dive down?
I think it starts with curiosity. I think it starts with an offensive mindset. We've talked a lot about curiosity today, so I'll shift to the offensive mindset. I just, as a leader, I want to show up ready to win. I want to show up with a competitive mentality to where I just expect I show up to win, and I show up loving the game. For me, I drove in this morning and I was just so thankful to get to compete today. I get to get better today. I get to learn today. And so I think having that offensive mindset, hunger to win, and humble enough to learn. And I think that those people that win are the ones that are committed to just continuous improvement every day, personal and professional progress every single day. And I do think that that goes back to that curiosity. What can I learn? What am I not seeing? Where can we have incremental improvement? What's all of that kind of stuff. But underneath this idea of just showing up ready to win every single day. And it's really challenging because a lot of times what you see in the world is you see people that show up to win and they just bring that ego along with them, and it leads to this my way or the highway mentality rather than let's lock arms and let's learn from each other and let's get out there and let's perform. That's a tough thing for a leader. I mean, we've seen in our world, it's so divided. It's like everybody's out for themselves and everybody thinks that they're right all the time. And as leaders, we just can't do that. We got to show up with empathy. We got to show up with compassion, and we got to show up expecting to win. And those things don't live in the same room all the time. How do you show up compassionately and yet so driven to win the day? And if you're a leader that can do that, can have love for people, that can have compassion for people, that can learn from people, and still realize that that is what's necessary to win every day. If you can be that leader, then watch out. I think you're on your way to massive success.
It sounds like it's a case of you've got a lot of tools in the toolbox that you decide based on the situation, which one do you take out and use, whether it's being creative, whether it's being process driven, whether it's listening, whether it's communicating, asking questions. It sounds like you need to be pretty good at navigating the different situations that you find yourself in.
Yeah, I mean, I think like I said before, we've got to discover the right tools, race to the right tools, race to the right tech, race to the right processes. But without the right mindset as a leader, I think you're in trouble. So before tools, before playbooks, before plans, before all of that, you've got to show up with the right mindset. And I think leaders oftentimes devalue mindset and highly value tools and tech and operations and those things. And I just, like we've discussed here, it's not, if you're going to battle with one side of the coin, I think you're in trouble. If you go to battle with both sides of the coin, and that includes the right mindset and the right operation, then man, watch out. I think you're going to move mountains.
Are there any things that, let's just say, you would kick yourself if you never had the chance to share it? So this is me trying not to leave any stone unturned. Mike, do you have any parting thoughts, words of wisdom for those that are listening?
No, I wish. I mean, I don't know that even that exists. I don't know. I mean, for me, perspective is huge. Having the right perspective. My faith is important to me. And just realizing that I'm small and God's big, is peace. There's peace there. There's peace. And it allows me to run wild. It allows me to not expect perfection every day. It allows me to fail and get back up, because God's in control and I'm not. And I get to run wild because of that. I get to risk wildly because of that. I get to love people because of that, because I'm loved, and I get to realize that what, this is temporary and it's not my home, and that gives me peace too in a weird way. So I don't know. Perspective is really, really important. Knowing that life is big and you're not, that just, for me, that's peaceful. Maybe it's not for other people, but for me, that's really peace. And, losing my son just helped, give a lot of perspective. but I don't just see it from that. I see perspective in just what people go through, how they survive the toughest things, and still smile, how they are able to love people. And I think in our business, we just sometimes we disconnect from those things. And I don't know how smart that is. We lean into it. We're not afraid to be emotional in our business. We're not afraid to to love and have empathy and serve and those kinds of things. And all of that is baked, I think, in perspective. So probably perspective would be the thing that I would answer in that question, that tough question, Mike. So thank you for that. It's good.
You're very welcome. I think it's an interesting thought when you think about the mindset side. Is that based
Mhm.
on practice, or is that because of what you experienced? What would you say your mindset was put down to? I wonder if people listening might be able to take a piece of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think people that have the right mindset, I don't know. I don't know how they get there. I can only speak for myself. For me, it's going through the crucible, those periods of intense heat, those periods that just rock you to your core. Failure, I mean, failure's big. And when you're humbled, when you allow yourself to be humbled, I think that helps you get closer to the right mindset. So I don't know. I think what I've seen is the stories of the people with the right mindset have just had those crucible experiences in life, those periods of intense heat, and it just ignites them in the right way. Again, it doesn't ignite them to where they become a bull in a china closet, and again they go with the mentality of it's my way or the highway. They almost soften, Mike. They just soften. And I think that they soften because they realize that not everything is just as big of a deal as the world may say that it is. And that crucible experience, that period of intense heat, just seems to soften people and make them realize, you know what, life is short. I'm not in control. And I get to go pursue it in the most loving way and in the most wild way. And to me, I don't know. I mean, maybe not. I know not everybody thinks that way, but for me, that just brings me peace. And so I don't know. I that's the mindset that I show up with. The people that I most admire in life, that's the mindset that they show up with. And those people are fierce competitors. They expect to win. So never mistake that softening mindset as weakness. When I look at those types of people, I see tremendous strength, and I see them overcome so many things in their journey to winning. And it's fantastic and it's inspiring, and I love seeing it.
Thank you for that, Mike. I'm really grateful that you were able to share that, and you are right as well. I don't think you'd be surprised, but as you say, people that are, I guess, calmer than expected, they've gone through so much because they end up just comfortable with almost everything. That's
Right.
normally a
Yeah.
sign that they've been through the heat, as you said. Okay, so for those that are listening that would want to learn more about you, Mike, I imagine there would be at least a few that want to know more. How can they do that? Be your chance to share websites and social media, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, I'm on LinkedIn, Mike Thompson at SVI and Learner Mobile. And then, yeah, if you want to learn more about us, our organization, or whatever, check out learnermobile.com. It's like I said, that's our flagship product. And I'd love to connect. Yeah, I love meeting people and talking about this kind of stuff. So thanks for the opportunity, Mike.
Thanks so much for being a guest on the show. Those that are listening, feel free to subscribe, share the show, tell others, and also leave a review wherever you are listening into your podcasts. Mike, it's been great. I look forward to keeping in touch. Thank you.
Yeah, you as well.